Hey y'all. I want to have this month's tips and tricks. Both are under the topic of swatching. I know, swatching, right? Ooh. I'm definitely guilty of not swatching, but it's definitely best practice. It's the best thing to do, and I'm sure there will be times in the future where I totally skip it. But you shouldn't. You should always swatch, especially if you want to make sure that that garment is going to fit you the way you want it to and the way the designer intended. So, or also to figure out how to make the adjustments to make it fit the way you want it to. So, I don't know about you, but I taught myself how to knit, and so I never officially learned how to do swatching. So I had to do a whole bunch of reading and kind of hone in a specific way in which I do it and then figure out how to read and adjust. So I just wanted to share that with all of you right here in a really short, quick, simple video. So here we go. So number one, what's a swatch? A swatch, for those of you that don't know, is a small piece of fabric that is meant to mimic the intended fabric for the garment. So everybody knits differently. I definitely don't knit the exact same way as Andrea Mowry. She knits 14 sweaters a month, it would appear, because she's magical, and I only knit this much, so her knitting is going to be very different from mine. Mine's probably a little bit tighter than hers. So everybody has different stitches per inch and different rows per inch, and so the point of a designer who puts down what their stitches per inch is and what their row count is to show what their fabric looks like. If you have more stitches per inch, you're gonna have a denser fabric. If you have less stitches per inch, you're gonna have a looser fabric. And so, or like a more open fabric. So when you put it on, it's going to look differently than theirs if you don't match their gauge. And the good news is there is a way to match their gauge. We adjust our needle size. So how do I do it? When I look at a pattern, I'll look at the intended gauge, and I will look at the pattern, the needle size that the pattern calls for, and I'll use that to do my initial swatching. And so suppose the designer says it's like 24 stitches per 4 inches. So I will use the intended needle size, I will cast on those 24, and then I'll add another 5 to it, and then to that number, and then I will add another 10. And the reason is I like to make a border. So this is one that's shown in stockinette. So let me show you this, hopefully without it being blown out. It's really bright in here right now. So I have this border going around my stockinette stitches, and the reasoning for that is as stitches approach an edge, they warp, they change. They're not actually true to the side, to the fabric of what the knitted piece will be, because you have so much more fabric in an actual full garment or a full scarf or a shawl or something like that than you do in this tiny little close to 4x4, probably 5x5 inch square. So I don't ever want to include these edge stitches when I'm doing my measurements. I want to make sure that I am only measuring and counting my stitches that are closer to the middle. So I will make a border on the top. I'll usually do 3 ridges of garter. Then I'll start my stockinette, but I'll keep the first 5 and the last 5 stitches in garter stitch the whole time. So I like to make mine in a little border, and so then I'll complete this, and I'll make sure that I knit in stockinette for a full 4 inches, because gauge swatches are always done or typically done in 4x4, 4 inch by 4 inch squares. So I'll knit up, then I'll do another 3 garter, bind it off, block it. This is meant to be the gauge after it is blocked. So the designer has blocked the swatch, and now that that final gauge for them is after it has been swatched, the actual fabric. So now you have your knitted swatch. What do you do with it? So you need to have, you can use any sort of ruler or measuring tape. I personally really like my Acre Work or Ackerworks. Probably pronouncing that wrong. But I like this gauge measuring tool a lot because I can't really show very well here, but it grips on, it's got these really great little teeth here. So it kind of grips on and keeps it in place, but then it has these cutouts here. So it's really easy to do your stitch count and your row count. So I would just leave it there, and then what you would do is you would count how many stitches it is over 4 inches and how many rows. So you have your horizontal gauge and your vertical gauge, and you're going to write those down, and you're going to see, do they match what the designer has put down? If the answer is yes, magic has happened. Proceed to knitting your pattern. If it does not match, which happens, what you're going to want to do is try to figure out whether or not you need to go up or down a needle size. And it's really easy. So if you have too many stitches per inch, then that means that you need to go up a needle size, which makes sense. So if you have a strand of yarn and you're going around a smaller circumference, you're going to be able to get around that more times than if you had a larger circumference. You're going to only be able to go around less amount of times. So if you have too many stitches per inch, you're going to want to go up a needle size. If you have not enough stitches per inch, then you're going to want to go down a needle size. Again, for the same reasoning. You have a length of yarn, you're going around a larger circumference, you have less wraps than if you have a smaller circumference, you'll be able to have more wraps. So that's how you know whether or not you need to go up or down. How many you need to go up and down is specific to the problem. So if you're off by half a stitch, 1 stitch, I'm going to say go ahead, you're going to hate it, pull that swatch out, use that yarn again, but swatch with the 1 size up or 1 size down. If you're off by more than 1 or 2 stitches, I might recommend going up 2. But again, you know you're knitting, but you're going to want to adjust it. If you have too many, you're going to go up. If you have too little, you're going to go down. So that's how you know how to adjust it. Here's the other problem. Sometimes you hit that horizontal gauge, but you don't get the vertical gauge. And that can be a real bummer because typically when you're knitting, really it's going to be the circumference, the width of something that's going to impact the fit the most. So it tends to be the thing that's weighted the most heavily that seems to be the most important gauge. That being said, it's not that vertical gauge is unimportant, but in a lot of situations, designers will have you knit for a certain number of inches as opposed to a certain number of rows. So typically, in those cases, vertical gauge doesn't really matter because you can adjust how many rows you're getting to equal the certain number of inches before you start any sort of shaping or going for armholes or something like that. There are times where vertical gauge can be sort of important, like for raglan, just because of where the decreases are supposed to be. You want to make sure that your yoke is the right length. So you can make small adjustments in that way where you can do, if you're too short, you can go a few more rows before you do the raglan increases, things like that to make those adjustments. But typically the horizontal gauge, your stitch gauge, is in fact the most important thing to make sure that you're really getting as far as fit is concerned. Bottom line, gauge is really important. It is important to swatch. I know it's the total worst. Although some people like it, more power to you. I don't know where you get it. Can you please share some of that energy? It's definitely not my most favorite thing. I really love just jumping straight into the project, but I've definitely had some mishaps when I've done that. So I definitely recommend swatching. This has been a total crash course in swatching. There's definitely more details, more things you can do to be more specific. But I wanted to give a little crash course because I wish that I had had one. So that's it for me, and I will see you soon. And don't forget to give me a follow and hit subscribe. Thanks so much for watching. I forgot my microphone. What? I like to do something about it.